Hi, hope you're keeping safe and doing super well. If we've not met before, my name is James and I'm from Sydney, Australia. If you're wondering why my Monsteras are facing the opposite direction, today we're going to be chatting about whether you should be using a stake, a pole, or a trellis for your Monstera. I'm going to give you some pros and cons and cost of each method and show you some quick tips on how you can implement it. Now, if you like today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and tap that bell icon so you get notifications so you don't miss any updates when new videos drop. My Monsteras are my most prized possessions in this household, and one of the reasons why is because they are so fast in growth. There's something about a new leaf that emerges from that stem which gets me so excited every time I see it. Admittedly, I also have a camera roll full of them. Let me know if I'm not a crazy person because I feel like I'm the only person who does this. Due to its rapid growth, the leaves can become very unruly and messy pretty quickly. So if you're thinking about whether you should be supporting your Monstera in some shape or form, the automatic answer is yes, you should. Simply because Monsteras are natural climbers in nature and will do far better when given a strong support. Over the past few years, I've used so many different solutions and I'm here to share some of my experience to help you decide. So to take you on my journey, here's day one of what my Monstera used to look like. As you can see, it's standing pretty well on its own, but this was back in the earlier days. So let's chat on the stakes or poles that you can readily purchase from hardwares or nurseries. There are different types of materials. This can include wood, bamboo, metal, plastic, or COIR. In Australia, I've seen some nurseries already include a COIR totem when packaging up their Monsteras for sale. My Monstera deliciosa originally didn't have a support, so I actually had to go purchase that from Bunnings. The COIR totem is a popular option due to its thickness and ease of use. The other materials that I've listed could be used, but on its own don't provide a strong enough support, at least in the long run anyway. I've actually staked my Monstera propagation using a wooden stake, but eventually it will outgrow this. For each option, I'll be chatting through cost, some pros and cons, and giving you a quick styling tip. A COIR totem will set you about $5 to $10, and the obvious pros includes that it's super easy to use. You basically just stake it into your soil and you're ready to rock and roll. Extensions of the COIR totem can be purchased, at least the ones that I've seen anyway, and basically you can just purchase another one to stack on top as your plant matures and grows taller. Cons include maintenance can be super finicky with this because the leaves tend to be unruly and messy, and I find that I have to constantly tie them back. And also it outgrows the pole pretty quickly and you'll be out at the store again buying that extension. As for styling, your must-have product is soft twist rubber ties. You have to get this. I've used jute twine in the past and I find that it can damage the leaves when you're trying to tie it back. So if you're in Australia, at Bunnings, they have this brand called Saxons and it costed me $1.98, so roughly $2. And there's another brand called Whites, which costs about 5 times the price. This one actually looks better because it's a darker green and will blend better with your foliage as opposed to the other one, which is a brighter green. I snapped a photo for you guys to have a quick look. But basically, this is your go-to product. It's also good to keep some jute twine. Is it jute? It'd also be handy to keep some jute twine in your inventory because you can use this across other plants. I particularly use this for my ficus because the stems are hardier. So here's a photo based on personal experience. On the top left-hand side quadrant, you can see that this is day one of my Monstera, and it's got its leaves pointing in all different directions. In the second photo on the top right quadrant, this is when the new leaf started to emerge, as you can see from the light green leaf that is appearing in the center. On the bottom left, this is when the leaves started to sporadically move outwards, and it was generally starting to look untidy and unruly. And then finally, in the bottom right quadrant is when I introduced the COIR totem, where I pulled the leaves back and then tied them to the center. And that's where you can see I've achieved a bit more of a bushy and more luscious look. You basically just stake the COIR totem in and then grab some soft twist ties and you can cut them to specification. So what I would do is I would then wrap that around the COIR totem and the stem and then basically just twist the ends to allow for that to tie back. So you just twist them like that. So I'll use my Monstera propagation that I have over here as an example, but I've used a wooden stake here where I've staked this behind the stems here. This is to allow the growth to go upwards and that the leaves can grow outwards to the front. I'll grab my soft rubber tie and I'll use that to wrap that around the stem If I want to elevate the leaf upwards, I will then, kind of pull that a little bit further up and then basically just twist the ends to then fixate that into the position that I desire. So there. You can then cut the ends of these as you desire, but I just leave them. So let's chat about the trellis. The trellis is by far my most favorite option. As soon as my Monstera outgrew the COIR totem, I immediately went out and purchased a trellis from Bunnings. I used this one in particular. Trellises are great. You don't have to worry about bacteria due to its material, and it gives you so much flexibility when it comes to styling. There are so many anchor points that you can use for your ties, and essentially you can lift your leaves at different points and give it the aesthetic that you want. This is opposed to one direct vertical pole if you're working with a totem or a stake. So I first purchased this 60cm one, but then it did outgrow that in a couple of months, and then I was immediately out at Bunnings purchasing the 80cm version. So if you are considering this particular product, go out and do yourself a favor and do the 80cm one, because you'll be out there again buying the 60cm one like I did. If I was to turn back the clock, I would purchase one that is symmetrical, because I'm not too sure why this design has two different heights. Anyway, it is still my favorite because once you set it up and tie it back, you get the desired look that you want. So the cost is about $8 to $20 depending on which one you purchase. The pros are that it is easy, you just stab it into the soil, and then it gives you that great flexibility when it comes to styling. Although the cons are that it is difficult to extend as your Monstera gets taller, and it will. I'm actually going through that issue right now as to whether I should be upgrading my trellis or whether I should do something makeshift. And as your Monstera matures, the stability can be challenging. So here you can see that my Monstera is getting quite heavy and the trellis is starting to tip to a certain angle, and it almost looks as if it's going to tip over. As for styling tips, again, your must-haves is your soft twist rubber ties, and pretty much the same concept. You anchor it to the point at which you want. I prefer a more luscious look, so then I will pull those leaves in to make them look a little bit more bushier. So here's the photo based on my personal experience. On the top left-hand side, you can see that this is when it had its COIR totem tied back, but it was getting a little bit unruly because you see the leaves starting to chase the light on the right-hand side direction. On the top right-hand side, this is when I removed those rubber ties, and as you can see, this is no longer tied back and they started to fall out in all different directions. On the bottom left, this is when I removed the COIR totem, and as you can see, it moved a little bit further out. And then finally, back on the bottom right is when I introduced the trellis, and then I tied them back again. If you want to achieve the same look as I have, where it is facing in one direction, keep your Monstera facing directly to the light source of where it is sitting in your home. This is generally because Monsteras will chase the light path. Finally, a sphagnum moss pole or panel. This requires the most effort, but it will give you the most results. Essentially, sphagnum provides a medium for the aerial roots to shoot into, and they will produce more roots. More roots equals more growth. Sphagnum is used extensively in propagation, so why not have that encapsulated as a medium inside your pole? Now, there are a myriad of DIY videos out there, and I'm actually planning to make one at some point in the future. There are small businesses I've noticed in Australia on Instagram, eBay, Gumtree that have offered out their own DIY ones. So if you wanted to just purchase outright, but you will pay a little bit more of a premium price tag. I personally built one for my Monstera tie constellation here, and I can tell you it loves it. Every leaf that it puts out is getting bigger and bigger, and it is also putting out fenestration. So as an example, my Monstera deliciosa, it stopped producing those fenestration holes as it started to grow taller, but as a result of the sphagnum moss pole, you can see that I've got fenestration holes as it's growing more mature. In general, if your Monstera is producing fenestration, it is happy. It is growing in optimum conditions. Now, I'm not saying that my Monstera deliciosa is unhappy, but it could be happier. But disclaimer, it can be trouble in paradise. I'm finding the maintenance for my sphagnum moss pole can be very finicky. So you have to keep your moss pole moist for it to reap the best results, and I'm finding that it is subject to mold and bacteria. As for the cost that I'm quoting is off a random retailer. I found this on eBay for $30, but if you are building your own DIY solution, it can cost you up to $60 if you're buying those materials from scratch. Do note, you can make multiple poles, so that is the most cost-effective solution. The pros are that it's a no-brainer. If growth is your mantra, then this is the solution for you. It can provide a very stable support, granted that your DIY skills are up to scratch. The cons is that it is costly in both time and effort and requires ongoing maintenance, which can be frustrating if you're a lazy plant parent like me. Again, your must-have product is soft rubber ties for styling tips, and I just cut them into smaller sections and fold them in half. Oh. Okay, get a really tough pair of scissors.
Okay, so that was embarrassing. Here's a quick demo of what you actually should do. Grab your rubber tie after you've cut it, and what you want to do is wrap it around the stem first, and then thread it into the grills. Then twist the ends. Grab your tough pair of scissors and give the ends a snip. Gonna save myself the embarrassment and not do this.
In summary, the best option is the sphagnum moss panel or pole. This is if growth is your #1 priority, however, you will have to do ongoing maintenance for this. If you're looking for a simple solution, opt for the trellis. It's easy, it's hygienic, and it can give you some great styling options. So some closing remarks. My Monstera deliciosa is outgrowing this trellis right now, and it's starting to tip over as it's starting to get heavier. I've been pondering and sat there for about 15 minutes staring at it the other day, wondering whether I should build a massive moss panel, but then I thought about it again and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to keep this panel moist most of the time, and it's really heavy, and I'd have to bring it to the shower or the bathtub to soak it every couple of days because moss dries out very quickly. I'm a rather simple guy. I just want to enjoy my plants and I don't want to work too hard for them. I have seen some random photos online where people have started to stack these wooden stakes on top and tape them together. I think that's the option I'm going to go for. I think the key takeaway that I'm trying to relay here is that you have to choose a solution that will suit your lifestyle. If you have time for ongoing maintenance, then the sphagnum moss panel or pole is for you. But if you want something simple like me, just go for something like a pole or a trellis. So that's it for today's video. I hope I've helped you make an informed decision on which option you should go for. If you liked today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and tap that bell icon if you want to get notifications so you don't miss any updates when new videos drop. Do you like this content? Do you have any suggestions on what I could make? Or you just want to chat? Feel free to drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Stay safe because it is a wild, wild world out there. Now on to plant rants and bants.
Welcome to Plant Rants and Bants, where I showcase some cool, funny, or interesting plant content that I find online. So this was a rather relevant example on today's topic. However, I noticed someone seeking out for help on one of the plant Facebook groups that I follow with this screenshot. Now this is a perfect demonstration. This person has their COIR totem in front of the main branch, and to correct the placement, you would just need to switch it around so the totem is supporting the stem from behind. This allows the stems and leaves to grow to the front and the plant to climb.